Imagine being on the vacation of your life. A 5-day tropical getaway with unlimited food, drinks, and zero worries. You go to bed on the last night living your best life. But then, you wake up to a literal horror movie. No electricity, no air conditioning, and sewage is sloshing through the hallways of the ship. Passengers are moving their mattresses onto the deck to sleep outside as they gag at the horrid smell of human waste that is overflowing onto the floors. Some are literally spelling out help in giant letters on the deck as rescue helicopters buzz overhead. And others are doing their business into red biohazard bags because the toilets, they're completely backed up and nobody can use them. Now, in the midst of all of this misery, one bright idea emerges. Open the bar up and give everyone free alcohol. Yeah. Because nothing fixes a sewage crisis quite like unlimited margaritas do, right? As you'd imagine, things only got worse from here, and it seemed to some like they're never getting off of this ship. This is the story of the Carnival Triumph, aka the Poop Cruise. It all started when the Carnival Triumph set off from Galveston, Texas on February 7th, 2013 for what was supposed to be a fun 4-day cruise to Cozumel, Mexico and back. And for the first 3 days, it was smooth sailing. Families lounged by the pools, friends hit the onboard casino, and a bachelorette party was dancing like nothing could ruin their trip. Spoiler, something could. Around 5:30 a.m. after the final night of the cruise, as it was headed back to Texas, there was a fire. Deep in the engine room. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the halls, waking everybody up. Now, fortunately, the blaze was quickly put out by their automatic system, and the crew members announced over the PA that everything was under control, they were going to be just fine, no big deal.
We are really sorry about the wake-up call so early, but everything is under control.
And based on that, it seemed to everyone that this was just a minor hiccup and everybody was on their way home after an awesome trip. But moments after this announcement of all clear, everything's just fine, boom, the lights on board flickered off and the ship's engine failed. Behind the scenes, the fire had destroyed the ship's main power cables, and because of this, the entire power grid went down. The Triumph had lost all propulsion and was no longer moving. It came to a complete stop in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Soon, announcements from the captain confirmed the obvious. The Triumph was indeed stranded at sea, and they were figuring out a solution to help get everybody home. For the moment, passengers were told to relax and soak up some sun on the deck if they wished, while the crew worked their hardest to fix the issue. It sounded fine. Until reality set in. In the Caribbean humidity, cabins became extremely hot without air conditioning, and because of this, passengers started to drag their mattresses out onto the open decks. They even used sheets to build makeshift tents as they tried to escape the heat inside of the ship. But believe it or not, that heat soon became the least of their concerns. Within hours, someone made a disturbing discovery. The toilets didn't work anymore. All plumbing on the Triumph relied on electricity, which meant, the entire sanitation system was down. And it was not coming back anytime soon. Now, obviously, the cruise director needed to quickly come up with a plan for how they're going to handle this, and she jokingly suggested that people can do a number 1 in the shower. Now, number 2, on the other hand, way worse situation. And after thinking long and hard, the solution was to have the crew hand out red biohazard bags to every cabin. And they instructed passengers to go number 2 in those red biohazard bags. I mean, this is someone's vacation we are talking about. Some dude out there just proposed to his girlfriend 3 nights ago at dinner, and now he's double knotting a red poop bag and putting it in the hallway for collection. So anyways, this began the Carnival Triumph's transformation into the Poop Cruise. As the day continued and the ship drifted aimlessly into open water, some people tried to stay positive and keep a sense of humor about it. But as the toilets backed up and the sewage pipes began to overflow everywhere, their mood changed. The worst stench imaginable started creeping through the ship. And mind you, this is still just day 1. The once lively main deck where people were previously sunbathing and dancing had turned into what looked like a refugee camp of makeshift bedsheet tents. One passenger said that by this point he was starting to feel like a prisoner on this cruise ship, which is pretty accurate since you quite literally can't escape. All anyone could do was deal with the night and hope that tomorrow brought relief. This was the day where people had finally grasped that normal cruise life was over, and it was survival mode now. People woke up to the announcement that all perishable food had to be thrown out, because without refrigeration, it was gonna spoil. After that food was thrown out, passengers lined up for basic food necessities like peanut butter and bread and whatever canned goods remained. To make things worse, clean drinking water grew scarce. People hoarded soda cans and pretty much any drink they could find, while other people were hiding food in their bags so that nobody could steal it. And yes, that actually became a problem. Meanwhile, the toilet situation was just getting worse and worse. People were still using these broken toilets out of desperation, but also because they could not fathom using the red bag of doom. One of the chefs ventured into a public restroom at one point on board and said that it was the nastiest thing he had ever seen in his entire life. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what it was looking like. He said that people were using the toilet bowls even after they had completely filled, so it just piled on. Another passenger said that sewage was seeping through the walls of certain cabins. I mean, by now, just walking around the ship was awful. Now, luckily in all of this darkness, there were some bright moments of hope. A few tech-savvy passengers on the ship at some point realized that all of the ATM machines on board still had power. Apparently they had backup batteries inside of them, so these guys unplugged the ATMs and daisy-chained the power strips to create a makeshift charging station for phones and other devices. But even with devices, communication was still very limited. The ship's Wi-Fi and satellite communication systems were down without power, so not only are people stuck in this poop-infested hell, they also can't message any updates to their unknowing family members and loved ones. Or more importantly, scroll their YouTube shorts. Okay, that was a joke. Anyways, a major ray of hope finally arrived for every passenger in the form of another ship, as Carnival dispatched a sister ship, the Carnival Legend, so that they could transfer supplies to the Triumph. And when that sister ship pulled up along the Triumph, it was chaos. All of the desperate passengers raced to the railings of the Triumph holding up their phones in hopes that they could catch some sort of connection from the other ship. They were finally able to let their family members know about the absolute hell they were going through. The Coast Guard also came and dropped around 3,000 pounds of equipment, including a portable generator and cables to help them restore some basic things. Nothing crazy though, just like emergency lights and some other critical systems that the ship needs. The toilets, they were still a big problem. Luckily, by nighttime on this second day of horror, tugboats finally reached the ship, and because of that, there was a major surge of optimism. People were relieved. It finally looked like this absolute disaster was coming to a close and people were gonna get home. But that was not the case. It just gets worse. Mother Nature decided to throw a curveball when weather conditions significantly deteriorated. And with the waves that this wind caused, the ship started to tip over, back and forth, and that soup of urine and feces that had collected on the lower decks started to flood the hallways as it sloshed back and forth. And because of these now strong currents, the tugboats basically couldn't move the ship. Passengers were not getting home for at least another 2 days. By Tuesday morning, the ship was just barely making its way back, and some people were holding it together really well. They were doing things like playing card games to pass the time, or even making small prayer groups. For other passengers, though, things were not nearly as positive. Some tensions turned into arguments, which led to full-out fistfights, usually near food lines or charging stations, which makes sense. Luckily, other passengers were able to quickly break these fights up when they happened and calm things down. But then, someone high up within Carnival's operations had probably one of the worst ideas of all time. Reopen the bar. But don't just reopen it and serve free alcohol to everybody on board. And sure enough, once that unlimited beer and spirits started flowing through the bodies of these passengers, things got a little crazy. First, it wasn't terrible, just a party of sorts that kicked off. People were dancing. There was finally happiness during all of this chaos. And for a brief moment, people sang, tried to forget their worries, and drank, and kept drinking. And so, as you'd imagine, as night fell, the dark side of this idea emerged. You see, drunk passengers who had overindulged and no working toilets are probably the worst combination imaginable. And so all of a sudden, people are peeing off the side of the ship. Other staff even saw poop bags being chucked off of balconies and decks into the water. It was a mess. We know you're hot, exhausted, and also don't have a place to use the bathroom, so what if we got you hammered? Surely that wouldn't cause any issues, would it? As the ship inched closer to the U.S. coast, slower than molasses, the Coast Guard arranged for more tugboats so that they could speed things up just a little bit. They also rerouted the cruise to Mobile, Alabama, because I guess it was closer. Once they had the 3 tugboats moving the Triumph, it was still moving extremely slow, around 5 miles per hour, and the weather was not helping. All of a sudden, a rainstorm swept over which drenched everyone on deck, forcing people who had been sleeping outside to go back into the foul-smelling interior. At this point, the dark hallways, which reeked of sewage, were the best option for every passenger on this cruise. If that doesn't tell you how bad things were, I don't know what does. Now, as far as the crew on board the ship goes, these people were literal heroes. I mean, just think about how bad it already was for the passengers. It's like 95 degrees, smells horrid, no AC, but they luckily could rest and complain while waiting it out. The crew, on the other hand, was working tirelessly to give out food when they could, hand out water, clean up messes, which do include messes that are the red poop bags that are in hallways for pickup. I mean, God bless these people. Today is Valentine's Day for all of the couples on board, and they've been stranded at sea for 5 days. Definitely not the ideal way to spend that day, but luckily for them, things were finally coming to a close. The lights of the Alabama coast came into view as crowds and news crews gathered at the port to watch the Triumph's grand entrance. Now, I just want us to take a moment to really put this into perspective. For 5 days, these people on this ship were living in a different reality, a world with no plumbing, no power, and a near complete disconnect with the outside world. And then after 5 days of this hell, out of the darkness, the lights of normal civilization appeared. Two completely different worlds just colliding. One where life was going on just as usual, and another that had been completely disconnected, stuck in what was quite literally a floating hellscape where the rules of normal life no longer applied. To the people watching from the shore, it was a breaking news story. But to the people coming from that ship, it was a traumatic return from a place that didn't even feel real and that nobody else would truly be able to grasp. As the passengers entered the Bay of Mobile, Alabama, they rushed to the rails to cheer and wave, despite the fact that they were exhausted, dirty, and emotionally drained. Around 9 p.m. that night, the ship had finally been secured at the port, where loads of emergency personnel and media reporters waited. All of the passengers and also all of the crew felt bonded together. They had all survived this unimaginable thing that probably most people will never experience in their life as a whole. After the cruise, Carnival had promised to fully refund each passenger, provide free flights home, and cover any onboard expenses minus casino or gift shop expenses. I didn't even think of the fact that there was a casino on the ship. I mean, imagine losing everything on the last night of your vacation, and then you have to spend 5 days in hell knowing you're going home to nothing. That would suck. Anyways, they also got a credit for future cruises equal to what they'd paid, and also $500 cash for each passenger as an apology for their suffering. Now, some people felt like this $500 hardly made up for an extra 5 days of floating in a pool of sewage, because, you know, most people are also missing work days while they're going through this. It really is an understandable point of view, but at the same time, I don't think any amount of money can really make up for what these people had to go through. Now, obviously, despite all of this, people were simply relieved to be back on land. And to Carnival's surprise, when many passengers got off of the boat, there was a lot more positivity than they expected when passengers were interviewed by news companies. A lot of people complimented how unbelievably hard the crew worked. One passenger said that she never take a private bathroom for granted ever again, and another guy who went on this cruise with his fiance and her family said that after this experience, he and his fiance's father are bonded for life. I guess it makes sense that, you know, basically peeing into the same bucket for a week is gonna bond people quite a bit. Jokes aside, all of this really showed how powerful people can be in finding strength, even when it feels like the entire world is completely crumbling. And with that being said, if you ever feel like your entire world is crumbling, just remember, even on this powerless ship in the middle of the ocean surrounded by sewage and uncertainty, people still found a way to laugh, to love, to pray, and to support one another. And sometimes, that's all you need to make it to tomorrow.